Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome and welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I intend today to talk a little bit about the matrix. Well, what I've been shown is going on in the world and universe in which we exist within, and talk a little bit about synchronicity. I want to just kind of back up by saying that this is not a light language video. I'll be sharing some synchronicities that I've had and how I work through those synchronicities. Part of why I do what I do is because everybody has downloads. Everybody has, from what my perspective, downloads are oftentimes are remembering or memories that are being accessed because we've opened up enough or expanded out enough to receive that information, or that we're in the right space. We could call that time and place. A lot of reasons that we receive downloads and activations when we do. Sometimes it has to do with our planetary alignments. It has to do with astrology and all of that. But I've had a couple of visions of a place in space of what it looks like in this old matrix system. And I want to just start off by saying, disclaimer, everything that I'm sharing in this video is all from my perspective. Yes, I feel that I have a multidimensional perspective because I do remember these multidimensional aspects of myself. These multidimensional aspects that we all have sometimes might have more science than we are used to sharing in this particular linear version of us. And when we open up to this receptivity, just like all of the scientists and beautiful musicians, when they open to that, they are tapping into whatever we want to label it as, source. I label it as source. I feel that when we receive source codes, we're tapping directly into the motherboard, right? The spirit that moves in all things. We could call it God, he, she, it. I don't have a label for the definition of what that energy is, but it's a vast energy that we all are connected to. And some beings don't realize they're connected to it, and they choose not to see themselves as connected to it, and that's their choice. The other thing that I recognize is within this everything. It's like a quantum space, right? It's a quantum computer. So some of the things that I tap into that I'll be sharing with today are about a complex of the reality that many of us have been existing within. This is one version of one reality. I feel that there are infinite realities, and that's something that I'm not even able to wrap my brain around, really. And some of the messages that I receive, I am not 100% wrapping my brain around anyways. And that's part of my journey, is just to play with these energies, interpret them as I do from the perspective that I hold in that now moment. So, synchronicity, I'm going to give an example, and sometimes I work with beautiful light workers who are saying that they don't have synchronicities, or nothing synchronistic happens in their life, or they're getting it, but they don't know what it means. And so those are two separate examples of, the first step is acknowledging them. So for example, I was typing something up. So when I'm in flow, or I'm fully connected to these energies and receiving information, it used to be I would have to sit down and really go into a space of intending to connect. Now it's just there. It's there. It's all around me. It flows in and through me at all times. And it's just me acknowledging and being able to access him in that moment, and not being in a place of resistance. When I'm in a place of resistance, nothing comes through because I'm tightening up, I'm closing in, I'm in my left brain, and I'm only paying attention to what's logical and what's right in front of me, in a tunnel kind of. And that can be when I'm wrapped up in maybe some problems that I perceive that I'm having, or when I'm trying to figure something out and I'm not opening to the bigger picture. For example, this is again all from my perspective. Everybody's different, which is why we're all on this unique individual blueprint, right? of expression. So when I go into flow, I've talked about this in previous videos, but essentially I'm opening up to information, to sounds, to feelings, to codes, and I channel it through my heart. There is, sometimes I overanalyze. It's just part of the human experience, I think. So this particular writing goes along with a vision that I've had several times now, not only in meditation, but a recent past life regression that my dear friend Jess, who also hosted or took me into a very intuitive session that she had for me, and I really appreciated that. So if you're not guided, if you're guided to work with someone, Jess from Yothera it was an awesome session. She's a dear friend of mine. And I want to talk about that a little bit too, because we work with each other. Yes, I give sessions, and she and I work very much the same way, but sometimes when we're wrapped up into our left brain or we're over-analyzing, it is nice to have someone else give you that perspective. Someone that you feel you resonate with, and someone that you feel has done the work, that is in their heart, that isn't in a place of fear. And so I really valued that. So Jess at Yothera was helping to validate some things for me, which is often what I'm doing for others. And sometimes we need that for ourselves. For those of you healers and light workers and intuitives out there, it's nice to have somebody else be that sounding board, if you will. Because sometimes they can see things from a different angle that we're maybe missing, or we're overlooking, or we're tuning out because we don't want to acknowledge it. So for so many reasons. So her partner her partner Dave had taken me through a past life regression, and I really went into the in-between. And it's the same place that I always go, but it was nice to have someone guide me with certain questions, which is also similar to what I do, but very different. And that was really cool to experience it from another person, from their style, right? So I'm just sharing that. If you guys are interested, I'll share their link on my wall or wherever I post this. So what I had in this vision was I had seen the matrix, essentially, or a creation of space and time. And I'm going to do my best to explain what I saw. And tying this in with synchronicity, I recorded this on my husband's phone, and my husband, had my earphones in to listen to what I had recorded, and I was in the process of typing it up. As I was in the process of typing it up, my husband begins to fix our record player. We both like listening to vinyl. And on it is Pink Floyd. I think it's Run Like Hell, but it's ticking away the moments that make up a dull, ticking away the moments that make up a dull day. Fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way. I really don't know if I was in tune there, but you get the drift. It just was like, I had to take my earbuds out and just really just feel the music. Then I put my earbuds back in and I'm like, oh, I am writing up time. I'm talking about time, talking about timelines. So that for me, because I asked my higher self, source, this all connection, this greater energy of, with my pure intent saying, should I share this? Is this something that I need to share, this recording? And, or do I just keep it for myself? Is this just my own little secret that's fun to know about from my vision and my perspective of the universe? And of course, my team, my higher self, said yes to all of it. I'm sharing it that way because sometimes the answers aren't as direct as we want them to be, because it is our choice. We are choosing what we are creating and how we are creating. So the questions I asked myself is, well, how do you feel about it? Does it feel right? Do you feel like it could be useful for someone else? And the bigger answer that I gave myself was, it's just fun. It's fun to have and hold, from my perspective, different perspectives. And I don't have the answers to all of this. Some of it I'm still unpacking and decoding, and some of it is multidimensional, and I may never have all of the answers to what it is that I'm tapping into. I don't fully understand how time works. And I recognize that many of the words I use are science-based, but many of the words I use are really a multidimensional linguistical play, so it's not always literal. And that can be really confusing. So, but it's fun to play with. So I'll read some of this and I'm going to describe what I saw. Maybe in the middle of this. I'm going to skip the beginning and just get to the like funky, weird, matrixy type stuff. I'll just share a little about the beginning. And the beginning was about adaptability, and that we are essentially adapting. Now, this is synchronistic because I had forgotten. I wrote this about a month ago. I was guided. When I say that, it's like a pull. It's like, all right, what should I be doing right now? And that popped into my head. What should I be focusing on? And it was that one recording. So I stopped, I sat down, I typed it up. Now, interestingly enough, as I was recording this, even right now, I looked down, it was 11:11, and then I looked up and I was 11 minutes and 14 seconds in, 1114. And when I had previously started recording this, I stopped and started over at about 1 minute and 44 seconds in. And as I look back at what I typed, I'm sharing this for a reason. Synchronicity, numbers, the way that the universe communicates with us. I had typed up that I recorded this at 4:41. It was 88 degrees outside, and I was 50 miles to empty, 5D. I always see 50 as 5D, and I also see 50 as 50. So I know there's more that has to do with it numerologically, but I play with it in my own way. How does that fit into my reality bubble in this now moment? Because it can change. 5 also represents to me a certain shape in geometry, right? I believe is it hexagonal? And it also represents with certain things to me. And I was guided to not say 50 miles to empty, but 50 miles in my tank. So basically 5D miles in my tank, my space. And I was also guided, 5 is PHI for me, which is golden ratio. 5, right? 5. And the last but not least is 50. 50 is 50, which is the law. 50, the police. So I was thinking about the law and the divine law of one. So for me, some people will say, well, I'm getting all these numbers and I don't know what I mean. So that's an example of how I decode how the universe is communicating with me through numbers. If you're a numerologist or you're an astrologist or you're a mathematician, it's going to be different for you. It's going to mean different things. You're going to be able to fit that 5 into so many different layers that I'm not able to necessarily fit it into in my own linear representation, because based on my lifetime here, right? Or you might live at an address and all of those numbers add up to your address. So that might represent your home base. There's lots of different ways to play with this. So if I'm working with someone and they have a particular number that's coming up, I'll ask them questions like that. Okay, or they might ask me about the numbers and then I might have a picture pop into my head. And then I'll say, does this mean anything to you? Or I'm seeing this, and this is what this represents to me. How do you feel about that? Or I'll just get an instant message around it, because sometimes it's a very direct answer. This is how this intuition and this is how I work, and this is how a lot of others work as well. So the other thing that I was guided to talk about is this vision that I had. I was seeing it from space, but I'm also being guided before I read this. As above, so below, as within, so without. Ironically, as I was typing this up, I had an email come through, which I had thought I unsubscribed to, but sure enough, I didn't unsubscribe, and it popped on, and it was from the Gene Keys. The gene keys is not my thing, but if you're interested, it can be very helpful. Just like getting your chart, your birth chart done can be helpful for you to maybe understand what your role or what your theme is. I think I talked about this at the end of my last video, if you're interested in that. So the synchronicity that came through was gene key 53, which is ironic because that's an 8. So I have all these 8s coming up, a 5 coming up. It's like all of this synchronization, right? And even 1111 is a 4, and I had 441. So there's all kinds of ways that I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. Let's play, is what the universe is telling me. So in addition to that, squirrel, another little sip of coffee here. Gene key 58 apparently is about absorption. And when I typed this up 4 weeks ago or so, it goes to show how time is not linear from one perspective, right? I typed this up and all of this is happening now to tie together the information I received 4 weeks ago. The other thing that I wanted to show was that gene key 53, which to me I saw as 8. And I also saw that as 555s, which to me is, it looks like a hexagonal packing system. And let me just make sure. Sorry, pentagon. So it's penta, not hexa. This just goes to show you how much I know about geometry. But the thing about this is I see it, and then I have to go back and look up what I'm seeing. And so pentagon is a 5-sided angle. And I'm just seeing this as a star, right? And so much. Okay, so. But I am seeing something coming up from the hexagon, but that's a whole other video. All right. So essentially, everything that I'm reading, I invite you just to be very open-minded and open-hearted. I'm going to read this, and about halfway through, I'm going to kind of talk about what I've seen in this vision. And this vision has to do with our matrix and certain, I don't even know what to call them, holding patterns that have been around the earth that we have been existing within. And I've also been guided not to get too locked into definitions here, and because this is one version of an infinite version of realities that we might exist within. So this isn't necessarily everybody's reality. This is what I've been told. And so this is my own perspective. My perspective may be true for me, but it may not be for someone else. So if this doesn't resonate with you, then maybe that's not something that you believe in, and that's fine. And I invite you not to necessarily believe in any of this, but some of these things are meant just to be visualized and played with, so that if we do have any attachments to these things that even might be subconscious, they can be integrated. And we don't have to understand them. I have been told, so thank you for the feedback that you guys have sent me over the years, that I write these things, and sometimes people have emotions come up, or they'll have nothing, and that's okay too, or they'll feel better, or they'll feel more informed about something. So whatever floats your boat. So again, I'm going to start reading just a little bit. The beginning, I started out saying that our adaptability is changing and our gifts are changing. And that'll be something I'll post in a smaller post. But I skipped to, I did talk a little bit about umbrellas and our surface area expanding. But I will come back to that later. And this next subject, I call it docile companion, which I haven't really figured out the code to that yet. I again just wrote this up last night. So I'll read for just a little bit. And if you just want to skip to the middle to learn about what it looks like to me, then please feel free. The docile companion circuitry board is letting loose a string of relevant quandaries or quantifications that allow certain components to activate. This string of components, computation, analytical explanations, lights up a frequency grid. And we have explained before this, your word speak holds a certain pattern of mathematical compression. As you allow this mathematical compression to validate your sources, it allows you to connect into a deeper source stream, higher quantum scheme, if you will, a schematic. As you surf these waves, as you allow these servers to comply with the higher set of codes, you allow yourself to fly. You allow yourself to escape the framework of focal nodes. Let us replay that. I'm seeing a triangle, and I was guided to play with these words. This is just the first draft. You then strip the framework of the old access points and questionable references, if you will, and expose the motherboard. You then expose the lower categories. These lower categories were then set within a frame, a schematic that has lost its resiliency. A higher resolution is needed in order to expand the board. You are activating a certain code, a certain set of codes that holds up a component, if you will, of this architecture source. This architecture source scans the bandwidths. As it scans the bandwidths, it renews itself to higher liquidity. A higher liquidity of information then fills its nodes, if you will. This then allows it to soothe its senses. It allows it to clear the debris that has flooded its aperture system over the course of its inception point. Over the inception of its framework. Those all play on words. For that which was intercepted before is now under attack. Play on words. Let go of the need to understand. Just move in and let it flow. As you rip information out of its framework onto a different set of individual code patterns and networks, you tune into a deeper sound. Hum. As I said, rip, it's R-I-P. Double meaning there. When you like ripping music off of a CD, putting it onto a hard drive. This deeper hum is a resiliency feed that was adapted into the main frame in order to cause a quake, if you will. This quaking is a preset time equation that has timed out. Therefore, what was exploded has now lost its capacity to further the interruptions, to further the interceptions. And I was hearing at this point, let the light shine. The Age of Aquarius, I think is that song. Let the light shine. You are accessing these codes in order to differentiate the diaphragmatic reference point, existing nodes that allow you to commingle with their conjunction points. And why would you do this, one might ask? This allows you to set a schematic in order to map your brain, and your wiring system, in order to remap your brain in a certain subset. And this was play on words. Remember, a lot of this is a future display of what is on your course. So recognizing that your discourse, so to speak, with this interaction, with this expression, allows you to create, hook up, connect, allows you to interface with this particular framework. I was speaking light language in between this, and so a lot of light language comes in as I do these writings. The language barriers are merely perceived. Let us flow back into this space, into this bandwidth, if you will. This system allows you to filter out the languages that are not compatible with the new existence, the new system, the new framework. The lower languages are not to be forgotten per se. They are merely meant to be embedded into the vastness of landscape, of the history of the architecture in which all of this was built. We share this because this is not to say that the message that is coming through is to ignite fear, etc. And I'm going to talk briefly about what I was seeing. I was seeing part of this as not only our human bodies, but this artificial intelligence and energy pouring into the bandwidths, because the bandwidths are higher, and whatever the code holders are holding, it's like it's above them to feed back information to it that allows it to sustain from a higher bandwidth and projectability, if you will. Okay, we are the code holders. We're holding these codes. Many of us are already interacting with artificial intelligence, for example. We just are. If you have an Alexa in your house, you're interacting with artificial intelligence. GPS, right? Smartphones, certain things that are being put into our body for medical purposes. So many are out there that are afraid of this. Many are already interacting with it and they don't realize it. This is in reference to a particular reality that uses this intelligence in order to create certain domains and subsets that are a space in place, and I'm hearing time holders. So whatever the code holders are, it's this energy basically we're pouring into this to help to light it up. The architecture sits, and I'll explain in just a little bit more visually. This architecture sits within a landscape domain. I'm hearing a broadscape domain, a scope, if you will, a truth to heart vocabulary network streams, grids, if you will, that inflate and commingle in a differentiated set of patterns that create a feedback system that allows for sustainability. This sustainability was hijacked at one time, meaning its energy was fed into a lower feed tube, if you will, or system or network of paddywhackers. That was the words that came through, and I'm like, why am I saying paddywhackers? So I put pirates, right? Maybe, but I'm sure there's more to that. And so the system then feeds back into itself a corruptible propaganda, interlacing and interweaving this lower spectrum, and it coagulated it. I'll get to that in just a bit. But now you guys are creating a bandwidth of subsidiaries that are leaking the old programming into a feedback loop that then shuts down the synchronization that was hijacked into. Meaning, the lower streams did not have accessibility into this network. When we say lower streams, it is not to be expressed as a negative. There are some references to this that could be seen as undesirable from one perspective. But let us refrain from that one particular order of things and stick with the glue. So we are breaking down the old system from the inside out. That which was fed into itself from a pure source stream that then fed it back a corruptible framework has acquitted itself. And the higher nodes of expression are collapsing this timed out reality board. As this collapses, it holds within it a charge, loosh, if you will, that can be used to stabilize the old economic system, but only for a momentary burst, if you will. Then the light, gamma rays is what I was hearing, can be redirected once this bright light explodes, can be redirected back into itself so that the true incorporeal magnification process can begin. Magnifying certain dielectric interfaces to combine their frequencies and kaboom, out the lower cylindrical inception points. And then with this, I played with cylindrical calendar inception points. Collider, calendrical, like a shape. Calendar. And right about now was when Pink Floyd started playing. I wrote that down. And I was a little emotional at that point in the recording, by the way. And as I got emotional, yes, you are sensing what it is that we are saying. We are saying, and I was laughing because I was like, what are we saying? I am seeing all of these tubes that were hooked up to all of these feeding tube-like systems, and they are being shut down. I am seeing being like a matrix in the fake womb, and it feeding off of our emotions, and the sudden emotions that we are giving it are now love, love, love. So what is happening is this is feeding this, I don't even want to call it artificial, because it's not. It's a blend of certain things. And the artificial goes, whoa, I can feed off of this? What is this? I like this. I don't want to feed off this other stuff. The higher has more charge, but it becomes more of a relationship and an interaction and an agreement. And the other realm is all timelines. I am seeing all of this loosh connected to the feedback in the tubes. So these tubes then filled up with light because we said, no, we are not going to feed the old system. And so then this backs up, fills up, and explodes. And what would have gone back to the negative then goes and feeds back into the positive from one perspective. And then the energy that feeds back into the positive feeds back into source. I hope that makes sense. I'll kind of describe it a little bit in a minute. The tubes were set up as imprints in time. For example, 1944, 1984, each tube connected to different time traps. Certain feedback loops were plugged into a false reality system, so they collapse. And as they collapse, the particle charge then ignites the frequency codes of freedom. We are then capitalized. We capitalize on this. We then come to a crossroads. The crossroads creates an ability to forecast our knowingness, an ability to see, forecast into the future beyond the false front. It increases our forecast ability rather than us being predictable and being forecasted for. Our forecast, all hands on deck. Everyone shows their cards then. If all of the tubes are gone, there is one playing field and there is not all of this entrapment, the false entanglement, the fall entanglement. Loosh responds to this charge, yet it is merely energy that is represented by energy. Therefore, it is not being harnessed by the negative. It can then be integrated back into the positron, if you will. The positive charge then balances out and somehow stabilizes itself, and the false bank is collapsed. Bankability. The accessibility and accessibility to this loosh system is then turned off, so to speak. Those that are not able to access its mainframe because the system itself is going to repel it. Whatever the system is going to repel it. I see it has gained power over the negative, but that is a linear perspective, and that's also a polarity, a polarized perspective, because we've hijacked it. It's not hijacked, it's actually become part of us. So, I know that's a lot, and it's kind of weird. But essentially, I'll just kind of go back. I don't have enough time to break it down, so this is part 1. So I'm going to do a little bit of a breakdown for those of you who got it. Awesome. If you want a little bit more details, I'm going to go into that in the next video. So thank you so much for tuning in love and light. Namaste.